Well, let's begin with the GOP. Ted Cruz wins the Republican caucus in Iowa. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are locked in a virtual tie at this time. The first votes in campaign 2016 were cast tonight in Iowa, where voters gathered in churches, schools, and homes to pick their favorite Democrat and Republican presidential candidates. The story coming into tonight on the Republican side was Donald Trump versus Ted Cruz.
And it looks like round one goes to Cruz. Let's take a look at the results tonight with 99% of the vote being reported. Wow, look at that victory, 28% for Ted Cruz to Donald Trump's second place finish so far at 24%. And Marco Rubio not far behind at 23%. In fact, here's what Cruz had to say just a short time ago.
Tonight is a victory for millions of Americans who have shouldered the burden of 7 years of Washington deals run amok. Tonight is a victory for every American who's watched in dismay as career politicians in Washington in both parties refuse to listen and too often fail to keep their commitments to the people. Tonight is a victory for every American who understands that after we survive 8 long years of the Obama presidency, that no one personality can right the wrongs done by Washington.
And everyone, of course, expected that tight race between the Democrats. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders have been polling neck and neck, and that's what we got tonight. Now take a look here. Hillary Clinton, 661, 50% of the vote. Also, 50% of the vote is Bernie Sanders. Just a handful of votes between the two at this point in time. You see Martin O'Malley, who earlier tonight suspended his campaign at just 1%, but there were record numbers on both the GOP side and the Democratic side, as well as those caucus sides stayed open late because of the large amount of people who were coming in to vote.
But it's Hillary Clinton who's claiming the victory tonight. However, Sanders is not conceding defeat.
It is rare that we have the opportunity we do now to have a real contest of ideas, to really think hard about what the Democratic Party stands for and what we want the future of our country to look like if we do our part to build it. I am a progressive who gets things done for people. I am honored to stand in the long line of American reformers who make up our minds that the status quo is not good enough, that standing still is not an option, and that brings people together to find ways forward that will improve the lives of Americans.
As I think about what happened tonight, I think the people of Iowa have sent a very profound message to the political establishment, to the economic establishment, and, by the way, to the media establishment.
Well, a record number of Republicans voted in tonight's caucus.
That is right. KCAL9 political reporter Dave Bryan joins us now with more on the final numbers that came in, as this was a tight race for not only for the Democrats, but also between a couple of candidates on the Republican side as well.
It absolutely was. What a night, huh? I mean, you know, for the first one out of the season, this is pretty wild. Tonight, results in Iowa had something for everyone. The super tight finish between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, so close that at this hour they're both listed as getting about 50% of the vote. Sanders called it a virtual tie, as you heard, although Hillary Clinton sounded like she was declaring victory, and an upset in the Republican caucuses that left Donald Trump a bit more humble.
Unbelievable.
Just when it appeared Donald Trump might pile up caucus and primary victories on his way to easily taking the Republican presidential nomination, here comes Iowa with a message for Trump. Not so fast, my friend.
We finished second, and I want to tell you something. I'm just honored. I'm really honored. We will go on to get the Republican nomination, and we will go on to easily beat Hillary or Bernie or whoever the hell they throw up there.
God bless the great state of Iowa.
Trump finished second behind Senator Ted Cruz, who put more into Iowa than the other candidates and was still hammering away tonight.
Tonight is a victory for the grassroots. Tonight is a victory for courageous conservatives across Iowa and all across this great nation. Tonight, the state of Iowa has spoken. Iowa has sent notice that the Republican nominee and the next president of the United States will not be chosen by the media.
And Senator Marco Rubio ran a strong third, coming within an eyelash of catching Trump and sounding like he had won.
So this is the moment they said would never happen. For months they told us we had no chance. For months they told us because we offered too much optimism in a time of anger, we had no chance. Tonight here in Iowa, the people of this great state have sent a very clear message. After 7 years of Barack Obama, we are not waiting any longer to take our country back.
On the Democrat side, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton finally won an Iowa primary, acknowledging to a huge crowd of supporters her victory over Bernie Sanders was a close one.
So as I stand here tonight, breathing a big sigh of relief, thank you, Iowa. I will keep doing what I have done my entire life. I will keep standing up for you. I will keep fighting for you. I will always work to achieve the America that I believe in, where the promise of that dream that we hold out to our children and our grandchildren never fades.
At this middle school in Des Moines, nearly 800 friends and neighbors packed the hallways and the gym at a Democratic caucus. A record crowd, more than 200 above the 2008 turnout when Barack Obama won the caucus. In fact, it was standing room only.
Those who are standing, if by some miracle you formed into lines of 10, we would get this count done pretty fast.
Just send the ballots.
And at this church in Ankeny, also packed with caucus goers, they passed down slips of paper with their votes to be counted in the Republican contest. Two caucuses that reflect the excitement and the energy of a wild night in Iowa. All right, now here's the latest on the Democrats' tight race in Iowa. Bernie Sanders said the results are so close that he and Hillary Clinton will get the same number of Iowa convention delegates. And Sanders declared victory over the Washington establishment, as did Ted Cruz. Very popular theme tonight.
You know, it seems there's enough winners really to go around because we don't know what's going on the Democratic side, of course, and then you have Cruz on the Republican side, but you have a tie pretty much goes to Sanders, I think. Rubio did really well. He never polled higher than 20%. He got 23% tonight, and the people voted in record numbers.
Well, the fact is, Rubio came within a point of beating Donald Trump. Now, that would have really been devastating to Trump. This was a good night for Marco Rubio. In fact, it sounded like he was declaring victory probably for the same reason we're just talking about. He slowly was moving up in the polls and seemed to pick up steam in the last week or couple of weeks. And tonight, it really came through in the results of the caucuses there. And by the same token, Bernie Sanders in a virtual tie with Hillary Clinton, my God, 6 months ago that would have been unthinkable. So although I'm sure both of them would rather have a victory, for Sanders, this really moves his prestige quotient up quite a bit, having virtually tied Hillary Clinton in a state she was expected to win all along.
Boy, this has really taken, you would think, taken the wind out of Trump's sails to lose, but then to be that close to Rubio. Do you think maybe he's having second thoughts about I should have gone to that debate right before the caucus?
Good point.
I bet he is, right? I mean, there's no question that that will certainly come up. That issue of whether he should have gone to the debate or not. A lot of critics now will be saying that apparently voters thought, hey, this guy is not that serious. We're not that sure about his temperament. How could he not show up at the final debate before the Iowa caucuses? And I think you're right. I think there'll be a lot of people speculating that may have been what did him in. Jeff, Lena?